Now, the big shift that you need to pay attention to is that we're moving from the Gen AI chapter, the first chapter of the great commoditization, where AI was good with writing and language and email and summarization, et cetera, to the agentic era. This is where these agents can take actual actions on your behalf. They can book things, they can do your accounting, they can call your doctor, they can do lots of different things around the house. This will require new mental models. This will require new ways of thinking in order for you to prepare for this era. And as I said, right now is the best time to get engaged if you haven't done so yet. Many of you have heard me talk about swarm AI, and I have lots of stuff on the web if you want to get deeper into it. But this is what the agentic era is going to look like. Many bots that help us with things like accounting, commission, customer service, itinerary display, calling the gardener when you're out of town, whatever it may be. Every one of these is small, but the cool thing is that they're collaborative, meaning that any one of you can go build one little agent that works really well for you. And then you can partner with another agency, another hotel, another service provider, and put your agents together. So the reason the swarm is so beneficial for industry like ours and for a network like ours is because it's inherently collaborative, which is what we're already best at. And it can start small and build over time. You don't have to have all the answers for this to work.
I want to take a moment and actually zoom in on how AI is impacting all of your worlds and the organizations in which you lead today. And in some ways, I'd like to use this example of it's time for us to put on our oxygen mask because, as Gilad just brilliantly said, change is not stopping. And so, as much as, again, as Matthew said, is AI, this is not technology revolution simply, it is also leadership transformation. And these are the ways that AI is going to transform the way you lead. And let's start with the very first one, because it's humbling and it's hard for us to realize. We are all sitting in this room because of the deep expertise you have in your domain. I am a researcher. I went to school for over 10 years to become an expert. My AI agent learned what it took me 10 years and a lot of money to actually capture that in minutes. And so the question is, who do we become as leaders when intelligence becomes democratized? When our expertise is valuable to anyone, who do we then become? And I think that's probably one of the most existential crisis questions we have as leaders today is who are we in this moment of AI? And if it's not our expertise, what is that? And that often becomes a human side. That becomes our ethics, our wisdom, our judgment. And if we're going to be honest, maybe a little bit of the messy human side of managing employees. That is the real business of leadership today. Number two, hierarchy has never probably been the best way to manage a business. That is certainly not going to be the case with AI today. AI is becoming one of these very bottoms up technologies. I would almost place a bet today that your employees are using AI much more frequently than probably a lot of us today in the room. This is very much a bottom ups revolution, and we have to get our heads right about that. Predictability was never possible, and Matthew alluded to this in his opening. It is certainly not possible today. I was actually just working with Sonesta Hotels last week, and we were trying to figure out, with the World Cup being in the United States, we thought we had a predictable model built of how many hotel rooms were going to be at capacity. Upside down right now because of a lot of the geopolitical conflict. So the reality is predictability is no longer possible. And so how do we actually plan thoughtfully for our businesses? This is a big one, and I wanted this to be a little bit of a wake-up call as well, is that transparency in our business is no longer going to come from oversight. AI to many leaders today is a black box. When I consult with executives and board members, they always tell me, Kelly, this is like a word machine. I'm not really quite sure what happens, but it just spits words back out. And that's really a problem. And to get to the next point, those of you who might be using a free AI, ChatGPT or free AI service, that is not free. You are actually participating in a broader open ecosystem, meaning that data is going out into the universe and models are being trained on. And that changes the dynamics of business when we're no longer operating in a closed ecosystem. And that, I think, governance is probably going to be one of the very first things we're going to have to figure out to get this moment right. And so because of that, decisions too are no longer going to be human. I mean, and that's really wild to think about. Even though technology has progressed, oftentimes humans were still the sole providers of decisions. Almost every decision, I would say from 6 months on, will be assisted or augmented by AI. As leaders in your organizations, do you have a decision-making framework? Who do you end up holding responsible if something goes wrong? These are the questions of our time as leaders. And then finally, and I think this is great news for everyone sitting in this room today, I think smaller teams are going to win in the future. Big businesses can't move fast enough right now. Bureaucracy gets in the way of this. And so smaller teams will win.
I've been using this term mental models. It's a fancy term. It just means shortcuts to thinking. So the world's too complicated. We're all too busy to think through everything from first principles every single time. So a mental model is a shortcut to thinking that we deploy. So one of the mental models that you as leaders need to develop for your teams is when to deploy artificial intelligence within your business. And as we already said, one size fits all fits no one at all. Right? This is going to be different for each of your businesses. So your job as a leader is to create mental models. I'll give you 3 examples of what they look like, to share those mental models with your team, and then exactly as Kelly said, to move into the innovation side of things, not being a chokehold as the leader or the owner, but allowing innovation across your organization. So 3 simple examples of mental models. These will work for some of you and they will not work for most of you. Your job is to create your own mental models that work for you. So if the question being asked is, when do we deploy AI within our business and our brand? One mental model might be when the speed of a response outweighs the human touch. So I'll give you an example. If I'm writing to your travel advisor, your concierge, and I say, what's the dress code at that temple? What's the tipping culture in your country? I'm probably packing my bag or going to the bank, and I want the answer right now. If I'm asking you, where should I propose to my girlfriend? Or where should I take my kids for their first international trip? I'm very happy to wait for you to wake up tomorrow morning and to give me a thoughtful human answer. So for some brands, they will say our mental model is when the speed of a response, the value of the speed of a response matters more to the consumer than the human touch, we deploy AI. And when it's vice versa, we do not deploy AI. Another mental model to use is one that we heard at the Tech Summit a couple years ago. This was created by Carolyn Corda, who runs the hospitality practice at Deloitte. And this is a mental model of how to use AI for personalization within your clients. Now, of course, your clients are not the average of people in the world. So you have to create a mental model that works for your business and your brand. So in her mental model, she identified 3 elements: clout, comfort, and convenience. Convenience is that phone number for the airline where you get to skip the whole line and you get to talk to someone right away. That's really convenient, but there's no clout. No one knows you get to call that phone number. Clout is like boarding the plane first. Everyone sees you board the plane first. Or having dinner with the captain on the ship. Everyone sees you having dinner at the captain's table. And then comfort is an upgrade to a big room. No one knows which room I'm in or you're in at this hotel, but it's probably more comfortable if you have a nice big room. So as you can see, she plotted these things that matter to her customers and created a mental model. So she said in her mental model, the Warren Buffett cares a lot about comfort, and the Kim Kardashian cares a lot about clout, and whoever this lady is cares a lot about convenience. But that's how you create a mental model for your own business. Think about what matters to my customers, what matters for my brand, and how do I position travelers across that? And you can use that to train AI that can do personalization, not generically like the mediocre stuff that comes out of OpenAI, but really personalized to you.
What are those trade-off decisions everyone in this room is going to have to make? Because it is not a win-win. It's oftentimes going to be balancing where you win and where you lose.
Yeah, so first and foremost, as we've said many times today, there's no one size fits all. So the key trade-offs go back to your brand, to your philosophy, to your business, and to your customer bases. And what are the things that matter most to them? So the first thing is thinking about your core business and your core brand. And what can you not give up? What is it really at the core of it? And what is nice, but can be automated, augmented, enhanced with AI. These are things like speed versus human touch. Some brands want to be incredibly responsive, and some brands want to make sure it really feels incredibly human. Another is security versus connectivity. So many of you come to me and say, my system here doesn't talk to my system here, and that's an awful pain, and it's true for everyone right now. And we could connect everything, but then there's security trade-offs. So thinking about connectivity versus security. And as we talked about, in automating the predictable, really thinking about what is that element that's most predictable that really is not adding value. So I think every business has trade-offs, and you have to think about what makes sense for you and share those trade-offs with your team so they know how to innovate in a company and brand safe way.
Yeah. This business runs on social capital. And how do you see that as a trade-off? Like if we're going to automate certain parts of the process, that means we are no longer going to have a touch point and we are actually trading off some of that social capital moment we could be building. How do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think trust is one of the few business moats that will be around forever.
Okay.
And I think trust comes from a mix of human and tool. the analogy I'm sure most of you have heard me make. If you walk into your accountant's office and there's not a calculator on their desk, you should probably turn around and walk out. You do not want an accountant who's doing math by hand. And very soon, the same thing will be for a travel advisor.
Sure.
I want trust from the human relationship, from the experience, from the knowledge,
Yep.
knowing that this person is supported by the best tools and the best technology to perform their job. That's true for any service provider I want.
So I think the other thing, though, that we have to talk about here as we're talking about trust is how many of you are using some free version of an AI tool today? Anyone there? See about probably 25% of the room go up. That I think is going to be something that we're going to have to grapple a bit with, because obviously we're using free tools because we don't want to necessarily put the investment. And we also, there's a huge question out there of what's the ROI on a lot of this. I think that's very much an open question. And so I think it's just really important to realize that if you are using a free tool today, that is opening you up to potential trust issues, and it might be worth that $20 a month or $30 a month to make sure that you are guarding your
being
data.
Too nice. It is irresponsible of you to use a free account with client information. You need to pay $20 a month, and most of you are leaders. At some point soon, need to start getting some enterprise accounts for your teams. You do not want them using their own tools on their free time with your company data.
So let's take a look back at the polls here to see what we have. Interesting. We actually have a lot more variability than anticipated. So obviously we're responding to this in real time. I think for preferred partners, this makes a lot of sense, seeing the experience itself. I mean, I think that's actually where you were commenting on stage, but I'm curious, where do you see, Gilad? Because this is actually, outside of booking, there's a lot of still wanting in this room to keep human.
I mean, my initial reaction is, I agree. I mean, this looks like the pretty right distribution for where we are with AI today. Maybe there's a little high in the discovery and ideation, but nonetheless, this looks like really good to me. As I said, the experience itself, I don't need to tell you guys, right? Travel is one of life's greatest pleasures. That's the thing that we absolutely want to keep exactly as is. What about you? What's your reaction?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think I was expecting to see less distribution across all of these, to be honest with you. So that also shows me that in this room, there's probably a difference in where your value proposition is going to be.
Absolutely.
So I think that's, again, this is a trade-off decision you all have to make. And you're going to touch on this in a second about this one size not fitting all. But this is truly, as it comes to AI, I hope what we're seeing here is there is no right or wrong answer. It really depends on who you are as a leader, what matters for your business, and what's going to best be in service of your customers. I do think it's interesting that we see booking. I think people are ready to automate in many ways is what definitely comes loud and clear. And again, in the workshop, what Gilad and I are going to be working you through is as you look at all these processes, we're going to go through a framework today and actually go down and drill down into the actual processes and tasks that occur within each of these to make it more than just a big idea, to actually figure out as you go back into your business, how can you actually begin to take advantage of this low-hanging fruit in terms of automation and have even more clarity that, again, it's going to be easy to get wished away by AI and chase the shiny object to making sure that you stay true to your core value proposition and who you are. Gilad, what are the 3 big takeaways here?
First and foremost, not on the screen, but what I said at the beginning, you are not behind, but right now might be the last best chance you have to begin your own learning journey. And as Kelly said, 30 minutes a week, we can all afford 30 minutes a week for our own personal learning and development. But 3 core takeaways from our conversation. First, custom tech is now at your fingerprints. We've all felt for the last 25 years that we were at a systemic disadvantage compared to other industries or compared to the giants of our industry. I'm really excited to tell you that disadvantage is now over. The number of engineers on your team, the number of PhDs you can hire is no longer correlated with your ability to deploy high quality custom technology for your business. I think that is the most exciting thing that's happened for small and medium business in my lifetime. Number 2, small and authentic will win the race in the future. As Kelly shared from her research earlier, small teams that have shared vision, shared mental models, and can collaborate quickly can achieve significantly more from very large, heavy teams where there's a huge communication tax and a lot of difficulty in decision making. And of course, finally, diversity remains our strength. The reason the Virtuoso network works so well, and as we bring AI, we're going to build AI in a way that really reflects our network, is because we benefit from the knowledge, expertise, and human connection of the global network. So remember, our diversity is our strength. Thank you guys so much for being here. We can't wait to continue talking to you about this stuff.